Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm demonstrating how you can make masterful vintage 80s 90s looking graphics using my newest creation, VINTONE. VINTONE is a Photoshop template that allows you to composite, color, and prepare these artworks for print super easily. It's an amazing and versatile effect. You've got plenty of looks to choose from. This is actually the process that I personally have used to create artwork in this style for years. And VINTONE pretty much streamlines that entire process for you. So let me show you how it works. Here's one of the graphics that I created with VINTONE, and this is actually one of the graphics that's in the sample file that we're going to be reviewing in this video. I just wanted to quickly show you the kind of look that we can get using this template. So we can see we got these really nice halftones going on here, which contributes to that vintage look. And we've also got quite a good color palette going, which is all painted sort of by hand. So this hair and the skin and all that was painted into the actual graphic, which I'll show you how we're going to do in just a second. The process for all this is super easy. I believe I made this graphic in like 20 minutes. So I'm just really excited to show you all about how this template works. So once you download the template, these are the files that you'll be presented with. You see we have a sample file, PSD here, a patterns file, and then the actual template file, vintone.psd here. So I'm going to first go over how the actual template operates, and then after that we're going to take a look at the sample file here and see just how I composited and colored everything, and maybe you could borrow a few tips and whatnot. So let's get right into this. To begin, I've just opened the template here, and we see we've got this splash page, which you could just go ahead and delete. Even though it looks so good, just press delete. And now we have the actual template, and it is a blank canvas for you to create your masterpiece on. So let's go ahead and open this group and see what we got in here. So here's the layout of the template. We have our artwork down here, which we are going to be compositing in this folder. So we'll do that in the composite folder here, which is where you'll put all your layers and all. And then right above that we have the textures folder, which is where you can put any textures that you want to use to texturize your artwork. I've included 3 samples in here from my worn Plastisol texture pack, which I really recommend you get for this kind of design because of how authentic the grunge and the cracks in that texture kit are. So if you'd like, you can go ahead and grab that at duransupply.com. But of course, you could just use these samples if you don't want to get the whole pack. And right above the textures folder, we have the processing folder, which is marked as red because you probably shouldn't touch this so as to not mess up the workings of the template. But just to show you, all we have in here is a threshold adjustment and some layers that are used to do processing on the actual artwork that you're going to be inputting in here. So definitely just don't touch this. You don't need to, but you're going to want to be playing around with the textures and of course compositing your artwork in this folder. Above this we have our choose dither pattern layer, and this is really important, which you'll come to see as I move forward in the tutorial. So this is just basically allowing you to choose whether you want halftone or a grainy look or more of a diffusion look, which I'll get into in just a little bit. But basically this is a smart object which when you'd open up, you're able to choose the exact kind of pattern that you want. So I have a good amount in here actually. I have different kinds of halftones. There's a clean halftone here, there's a distressed halftone, medium distressed, and so on. We also have grains and other patterns such as diffusion, which this is kind of hard to see, but diffusion. And we have different kinds of meshes in here. So these just get you all a different look or stylization of your image, which I will get into later, but just wanted to quickly gloss over that. I'm gonna head back into my template over here. Cool. And above this layer, which you don't need to mess with, by the way, this is just here so you can choose the pattern. It doesn't matter if it's on or off, just make sure go in the smart object and choose your pattern if you need. But above this we have the colors group, and this is where you're going to be coloring your artwork. So when I open this, we see that we have a group here called color composition 1, and there are 5 separate color groups inside of this group. And the only reason there's 5 is just so that it's easier for you when you're actually creating your graphic, so that you don't have to duplicate each group until you get the amount of desired colors. So let's say you have 5 colors in your graphic that you want to use, then you already have these 5 colors and groups here. And in the case that you needed more colors, let's say you have 7 or 8 colors in your graphic, then you would have to duplicate these groups. But it's pretty rare that you have more than 5 or 6 colors in your graphic. So I just made 5 the number here. And the coloring part of this is actually really interesting, but very easy. I'm gonna get into that in a second. So I'm gonna just close this group right here, and we'll get back to that. Let's start to talk about how we can composite our artwork within the template. So like I said, you'll be compositing your artwork in this composite group here. So just open this up, go into artwork, and then go into composite. Here you'll be able to choose your background color. I'm going to be demonstrating this on a black background, but I also have a design in the sample file that uses a white background, so you'll get to see some of that as well. So let's jump right into this. I'm just going to drag a photo into this group. Here we have Dave Grohl, who actually, his band just released a new album, which I listened to. I forgot what it's called. It was alright. If you guys listened to it, the Foo Fighters album, the new one, let me know what you thought in the comments. I thought it was okay. I thought there was a good last 2 tracks. But anyway, back to VINTONE. You can see that when I dragged this photo in here, it instantly gets half-toned or dithered according to our dither pattern that we chose. And this is a live effect, which is really cool. So if I move this around or if I scale it or do whatever to it, the halftone stays intact, and it is based on the pattern that we choose up there. So no matter what you do to this image, as long as it's in this folder over here, it will be dithered using that halftone pattern. So if I, let's say, took a soft brush and I drew over this, you'll see that even that soft brush and whatever pretty much is in this group is going to get dithered according to our dither pattern, which is absolutely one of the coolest parts about this template. And the fact that it's automatically dithered and it's a live dither effect just makes compositing so much easier. So much easier, because you already have the effect on it. There's a lot that you aren't going to have to worry about when you start compositing images together and trying to form a graphic out of it. I'll drag this other image of him in here, for example, and now you see if I turn the processing off, these 2 images would be very hard to composite together because of the color and so on, to mask out your subject and whatnot. When I turn the processing on, a lot of that goes away. So if I wanted to mask out this Dave Grohl in front of the other Dave Grohl, it'd be a very simple process because I could do just like a sloppy job. So I could just take a soft brush here and I'll go into the mask of this layer and I'll invert it. Actually, no, I won't invert it. I'll just paint with black over this part here very sloppily, just kind of revealing what's underneath, not exactly adhering too harshly to the edges or too strictly to the edges of our subject here. And you can see that works just fine. We don't need to worry about masking him out perfectly because this effect, I guess, desamples our images enough to kind of hide that or obscure it at least. So of course I would always recommend, putting some effort into this and trying to get some good detail in there with the masks, but you don't always need to do that with this template just because of how the effect works. So now maybe I just want to make this a little bit bigger to add more dynamics to the composition. And you see it's still, the mask is of course very sloppy, so you could go in and paint some more of that out to reveal the image below. Cool. I'll just add a slight fade to the other image here using a soft brush. So I'm just painting in the mask of that layer here. It is of course all dithered live, and I could drag whatever image I want in here and composite that pretty nicely with my other image. And since the halftone's already done for us, it's already a very cohesive effect. And let's say you just want to get like, I don't know, a kind of background to our subject here. Something I really like to do is when compositing a graphic like this is just to utilize blending modes to my advantage. So what I would do here is, instead of masking all this stuff out, I'm just going to set this layer to lighten. And now that removes pretty much the black of this image. So I don't have to mask out all that black. I can just mask out whatever white parts are overlapping here where I don't want them to. So I'll just brush out all of this with my mask here. That's already looking pretty cool. I could do that with as many images as I want. Of course, the composite is completely up to you. So if I wanted to add this crowd image in here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to set this to lighten, and I'm just going to mask out the part that I want in here. The rest is set to lighten, so it's not really interfering with the rest of the graphic here, which is perfect. So cool. Got those masked out. Maybe I want like, I don't know, a drum kit here to fill in the void, which, by the way, RIP Taylor Hawkins. So I'll drag this in and I'll set that to lighten as well. And then I'll just mask out the parts that I want, like I said. So I'll mask out the overlapping parts that I think don't look too good. I'll make some room for the guitar. Maybe I'll bring some of that detail back in here. And also another thing you should be wary of, or just, this is a quick tip, is when you're using a soft brush or just painting with masks or whatever, and you'll see this come in handy later as well with the colors, is that you can change the opacity of the brush and the flow of it to get more of a realistic paintbrush effect and have way more control or really kind of the intensity of your brush and how much, I guess, paint you would say that it layers down. So if I turn the opacity down and the flow down and I start painting over this, it takes more, I'm completely pressing on my mouse here, it takes more passes over the same spot to actually get the brush to work there. And that's just pretty much controlling the intensity or the strength of your brush. So if I go and check what the layer mask actually looks like here, we can see that as we paint with our opacity and flow down, we have more precise control over how much of our image we're actually painting out, because the strength is sort of set to a lower number. So I'll undo that and then I'll go back to my original graphic here and I'll just paint this in how I want it to be painted in. So I'll add some of this detail back in here, make some room for the guitar again, and that's looking pretty good. And that didn't take me long at all. By the way, an effect that I really love to do with this template, which I did on the sample file that you'll see, is an effect in our adjustments called shadows and highlights, which, since we have the processing going over this, it's a bit hard to get the right detail that we want out of our image, because I mean, I'll turn this off again. You can see there's plenty of detail in his shirt and the guitar strap and all that here, but it's just not coming through when we turn that processing on. And we could add like a levels adjustment here and crank that up and then mask that to where we want it, but I don't want to do that. I just want to edit, say, just this image and grab some more detail out of these shadows. So here's what I'll do. I'll go to that image, that main image of Dave Grohl, and then I'll make it a smart object. So right click, convert to smart object, and now I'm going to go up to image adjustments and then shadows and highlights. Cool. And now you can see these are the settings that I have saved as my defaults, and when you open this is the panel you'll see, but if you want you could show more options. So yeah, if we turn these shadows up, as you can see, we're getting more detail out of those shadows and it looks really cool. And if we turn the highlights up, it is dimming those highlights down to even out the image. And this is just a super cool effect that I think works really well for this template, because not only does it grab more detail out of these shadows and highlights, it also gives it that photocopy halo effect, similar to like an unsharp mask. You can see sort of in these edges here, and it overall just looks really nice on photos that have this kind of texturing or processing on them. So I'll press OK on this, and of course if I want to edit it later, I can come back in here and change that since it is a smart object. I'm going to paint some more out of this photo right here because it's bleeding into our main subject here a little bit, as you can see, which no worries. I'll take my soft brush and paint that out, and it's looking good. I'm going to quickly drag the Foo Fighters logo in here just to finish this graphic off. Cool, looking good to me. This was a pretty quick composite, so it's a little rough, but let's just go ahead and learn about how to color this graphic now. And by the way, of course, we still have these textures still operating here. So I have the sample 02 working right now. We can turn that off if we want, or experiment with other textures, such as this one. I think is really cool. Gives a scan line effect to the image, so definitely something to experiment. And then this one is just more of a heavy crackling effect, and I really like this one, so I'm probably gonna go with this one. Alright, so the colors. I'm gonna open up the color group here, and I'll open up our color composition 1, and we see we have 5 different color groups here. I'm obviously just gonna start with color 01, so I'm gonna hide all the rest of these so I can focus on the first color that I want to add in here, and I think that's going to be the skin tones. So I'm gonna open up this color group, and I'll open up this buffer group here, and we see now we have all the meat and potatoes, and where we actually paint our color in is in the mask of this layer right here. So where it says painted mask, that's where you're painting. So go ahead and click on the mask here for the color, and now you can paint in with a soft brush or any brush that you want the color for this graphic. And this is also dithered in real time. So you'll see when I start painting with a soft brush, for example, I'll zoom in here. This is just a normal soft brush, but you'll see that it's dithered in the same halftone pattern that our graphic is. So there's no transparencies here, and this makes it super easy to make a graphic and prepare it for screen print. And it's also just a super cool effect and really modular. And that is of course one of the main attractions of this template, is just how the coloring works and how the whole dithering process works. And of course we're still free to change the dither pattern here, and that will change how the entire graphic is interpolated. So just to show you really quickly, I'm gonna go ahead and choose a different dither pattern. We'll choose the diffusion pattern up here, and I'll make it a little bit bigger. I'll do like, I don't know, 130, just so I could see it a little bit more, or we'll do 150. And I'll save my smart object by doing Command S on my keyboard, and that will commit those changes to the original document. So I'll open that up. You can see we now have our graphic dithered in another dither pattern, and this is the diffusion dither pattern, and it's a really cool look, and I think it fits really nicely with the graphic. You can choose obviously between any of the patterns. I thought halftone also looked pretty cool with this, and the grain would probably look pretty good too. Something you may notice actually is that this pattern is harsher on the graphic, so you may lose a little bit of detail in and throughout. And if you want to make up for that, you can of course just go back into your composite and make a levels adjustment or whatever adjustment that you need. And I'll bring the midtones up on this one to bring out more detail, and then I'll just mask that to wherever I need the details back in. So I'm actually going to go back to the halftone pattern now, just because it's a little bit easier to see this graphic in. Okay, cool. So back to coloring this graphic in. Now we know how the other pattern works and how it affects both your graphic obviously and the color over here, so that when you paint things in, it is completely dithered and there's no transparencies involved, which is just godsend. It's amazing. Not to toot my own horn, but I think this is really useful for merchandise designers. Definitely a game changer. So this isn't really a good paint job, so I'm gonna redo this. I'll go into the mask here. I'll just turn that all black again, and I'll take my soft brush and I'll just start painting on the skin tones here with white in my color palette. So I'm gonna paint this in here, and as we can see, if we zoom in, it's a little bit hard to see with our brush so small, but of course this is acting as a soft brush, and we get that nice fade out here that you see from, you know, full opacity to zero opacity. So I'm going to continue painting in these skin tones here. So you see pretty easily how this works. I mean, you just paint in anywhere on the graphic, and you can see that it only affects the white areas of the graphic. That's because the color group is set to multiply, which is what you need. So it's only affecting the white values of our graphic, which is good because it is the only other value other than black. So we can paint in here wherever we want. I painted in all these skin tones here. Maybe I'll remove his teeth as well, give him some more life. Let's say I want to change the color of this, which you're gonna have to do once you start painting in all your colors here. The color of this is actually controlled with the layer styles. So how I'll change the color of this is just by opening up the layer styles of this group, or by opening up this little dialog here and clicking on color overlay. This is the color that we're painting it. So if I want to change this, I'll just click on this here and I'll change this to whatever I like. I think Dave Grohl is more of a, I don't know, he's more white, so we'll press OK on that, and now the color of that is effectively changed, and this process stays the same for the rest of the colors that you're going to be painting in. But one thing I do want to note is, let's say when you're going to add a new color in here, I'll go ahead and turn this one on and I'll paint, I don't know, I'll just paint generally over the background, or I'll do the guitar. So I'll paint in the guitar here, and of course this is in the layer mask, by the way, which I explained earlier. Make sure you're painting in that layer mask. So I'm painting in the guitar here, and you can see that I went a little bit over his skin here, his hand, which has the skin tone from before, and I don't want the skin tones to be affected by whatever I paint in here. I also want to change this color really quick. There we go, you can see it better now. But I don't want his skin tones to be affected by this color group. And one of the good parts about how the color composition operates is that the colors are stackable. So if I were to just bring the skin tone color group above that color group is now going to take precedence over the one we just painted. So you can stack these colors in whatever way you like. Let's say you painted in these skin tones and you want that to be above everything. So if you're coloring in, I don't know, the shirt or something, and you don't want to get any splotches of paint or color on the skin tones here, just make sure that group is under these skin tones. You can paint in wherever you want here, paint all over these skin tones, and it won't affect it. So that's a really cool feature to take note of and take advantage of. I'm going to quickly add another color in here for his hair. So I'll turn on color 03, and then I'll just paint in the layer mask for his hair. And hair is always tricky to paint in or mask out or whatever within Photoshop because it's just so intricate. So a trick that I like to do for hair is, when you're painting in the color, just use a lower opacity brush like 50 or 60, and that way when you're painting it in, you just have a lot more control over where it goes. So we see that the hair is kind of blending into the background and the logo. If I were to use a hard brush here, it would just paint too much in that area. But if I were to lower the opacity of that brush and start painting in here, maybe even lower, maybe like 30, then it wouldn't affect all those areas so strongly. If I zoom in, you can see more what I mean about that. It is kind of half painting in that color into those halftones. So I'll continue painting in here, and I'll just be wary of where my brush is going, and if it's going over the background here, I'll use a lighter opacity so that the intensity of the color isn't too strong, so as to bleed onto the background there, and it kind of looks like it's only in his hair. So I'm just going to quickly paint the rest of this in. Cool. Now we've got Dave Grohl colored in, looking good. However, let's say you wanted to move Dave Grohl in the original composite that we made. I'm going to go back here and I'll find this image of him. I want to move him, I don't know, slightly to the left or wherever. We see that when we move it, the colors don't come with it. So it looks like we'd have to color this all over again, but there's actually a solution for that. Obviously, you can move the colors accordingly, but to make this more efficient, what we can do is actually just link this layer to our color layers. So I'm going to go ahead, go up here, and one thing, by the way, it's really important is you want to name your color layers so that you don't get lost. So I'm going to name this the skin tones, or what is this? This is the hair. So I'm going to name this the hair, this the guitar and shirt or whatever, or you could just name it by color, whatever. And then this is the skin tones, and I'll put all these in a group and I'll name it Dave Grohl. So now I have all of these colors attached in one group, and I want that to move cohesively with our actual subject here in the graphic. So what I'll do is I'll select this group, and I'll also select our subject here. So I'm holding Command and selecting both. Then I'll go into the layer options by right clicking, and I'll click link layers, and that's going to link these two layers so that when I move one, such as if I just click on this layer here and I move this around, that is also going to move the color layers. I would just be aware, of course, you see when I'm moving this around, those colors are kind of bleeding into the other things because we haven't adjusted for the move in the composite yet. So let's say I wanted to move them over here, then I would have to brush these parts out of the logo and the background and so on, so that those colors aren't hitting those objects as well. Maybe I just want the rest of the background to be a singular color, and I just want to paint it in all at once. Then I'll just make a new color here, and I'll go into the layer mask to paint my color in, and I'll take a brush and I'll just paint over the whole graphic here, and that's going to affect our subject. But of course, we can just move the subject group, our subject color group, above this group right here, and now we have that in front. And of course, I wasn't too meticulous on the mask for this, so we can see some color bleeding into the other color, which is fine. Obviously, you should probably pay a bit more attention to when you're making your graphic. But either way, now I've painted in my whole background and color, and I'll go ahead and just change that color here to match the graphic a bit better. That looks all right. And it also unfortunately creeped into his eyes and teeth. So if I want to fix that, something that I could do is bring another color in here. So I'm going to pick up color 05, and I'll drag that in between the two layers here. I'll turn that on, and I'll just paint in here with my brush. I'll paint where I had the eyes and where I had the teeth, and I'll just set the color of this to white. And that way, when we add colors behind, this white still remains intact, and we don't have to worry about it being taken over by some other color. Cool, now we have the whole background painted in. Maybe I want to fade it out a little bit, or maybe I want it to be sort of an ombre or a gradient. So you could take another color group. I'm just going to duplicate my color 04 group here since we ran out of color layers. So I'll duplicate that, and I'll go into the layer mask here, and I'll reset that by filling it with black, which is just Command backspace on my keyboard. Cool. And I'll change the color of this to, let's say, like, I don't know, an orange or something. So I'll bring that to an orange. And now when I paint in the layer mask, let's say I just want this top half to be that orange, and I want it to be sort of a gradient fade. So I'll just paint with a soft brush in that top half, and we can see we kind of get that nice gradient fade in the background from one color to another, and it's all dithered and it's all interlocking halftones here. So this is perfect for setting to print. We're effectively kind of blending those two colors together. If I zoom in here, you can see just how that's working. Really cool effect here, sort of akin to pointillism. So I went ahead and messed around with some of the other colors here just to get it looking a bit better. But I hope that you're pretty much understanding the process of how this works and the massive implications that this has for merchandise design. Something I'll mention really quick just in case it ever comes up. If you're using these linked layers, so I have this Dave Grohl layer linked with the graphic layer, when you move it, I'll just move it to the left a little bit to show you. When you move it, you're also going to be moving the pattern file in the color. So right here in the color group, we see that this pattern file here, which is essentially what is dithering our color, or dithering the transparency on our color mask, it's moved. It's moved a little bit to the left. If I turn on my transform controls, you can see just exactly how far we've moved it. So if you were to go back and paint in, let's say, a part over here, which I can't because there's no white, but let's say there was a part in there that you could paint in, it's not going to be dithered by this pattern layer. So all you have to do to fix that is bring that pattern layer back to where it was. And to do that, you can just align it with the canvas. So select your move tool, go up here, change this align to canvas, and then just click align horizontal centers here. You can also align the vertical centers here to get that completely centered in the canvas. All right, cool. That's basically it for that. Okay, cool. Now that you know pretty much all there is to know about how the template actually works, now I want to run you through this sample file that I put in here, just so you can see the kind of workflow that you can adopt when working with this template. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up this sample file here. And this is a nice little Fleetwood Mac design that I made to display this template and how it works. So the same exact thing is going on here as I just showed you in compositing that other graphic with the Foo Fighters. So I'll go into the composite here and I'll just show you some of these layers. We have some adjustments going on at the top of this just to make the whole graphic brighter. We got our main composition here, or we got our main subject here, Stevie Nicks. She's singing on that mic, and we got our background here with the rest of Fleetwood Mac. So that's in the backing group here. We just have both on either side to fill in the composition. And of course we have that logo here, and this logo is actually a linked layer with some of the colors in the color group. So if I were to move this logo, we see that the color goes with it. And so I included this file in the VINTONE download just so you can open it and sort of play around with all these settings and colors and just jump right into the kind of workflow that you can adopt using this template without having to do as much learn by doing. So here you can just play around with all the layers in this sample graphic and all the colors and just experiment with a few things so that you're more ready and equipped to use the actual template when you want to. So I'll open up the color composition of this here and I'll just show you how I made this graphic. So I'll just run through all these colors real quick. We have the skin tone over here and we have the red, which is I use for both her hair and for her lips, and also for a little bit of eyeshadow here. And I have the blue, which covers most of the graphic, as well as her, I guess, dress or her garment. I don't know what she's wearing. But yeah, and it also covers some of the logo and the fringes of her hair, which kind of looks like it's a backlight that's coming to her and it's lighting up the edges of her hair. Pretty cool stuff. Then we have the yellow over here that I used for the logo, and I also used that same yellow in a microphone, or for the microphone. And I made these two separate groups so that when I move the logo around, it doesn't affect the color of the microphone, or it doesn't affect the placement of the color for the microphone. And I also included a graphic in here that displays how the white background works. So I'm going to turn this color composition off, and I'll turn off the Fleetwood example, and I'll turn on the Nirvana example, which is just a graphic that I composited for Nirvana. And then I'll turn on the color composition 2, which is the one for Nirvana. And we can see how this same thing works on a white background. So we've got all our colors here as per usual, and these pretty much progressively build the graphic up. The only thing with a white background is I'd be a little bit more wary of where you're painting your colors, because of course the colors affect any white that's on the canvas. So just keep that in mind when you're working on a white background. Now, when you're done with your graphic and you want to color separate it and mock it up, all you have to do is close this VINTONE template group and duplicate and merge it. So that's Command-Alt-E on your keyboard. I'm going to hide the VINTONE group layer here. And since this will be going on a white or a lighter colored t-shirt, I'm going to go ahead and just remove the white from this layer. So I'll take my magic wand, I'll press on the white here, and I'll delete that. And I'll make my background white to make up for that. Cool. So now I have this graphic on a completely transparent background. So if I turn the white off, we can see that this is all completely transparent and dithered. All the colors are dithered and ready for spot color print. What I usually do to send this off to a printer is I'll go in here and I'll select out each color with my magic wand, and I'll put that on its own layer. So I'll select the color and then I'll do layer via cut, and that's going to put it on its own layer. And then I'll hide that layer, and I'll do that for every other color in the graphic until I have all the colors of this graphic on separate layers. I'm going to drag this over to my mockup that I have here, and I'll just resize it to fit the t-shirt, and it's looking pretty good, looking great. Maybe I want to change the color of this to, I don't know, like a yellowish t-shirt. I can go ahead and do that, and of course I'm using my mockups, Duran Supply mockups, which I would always recommend. And I'm not just saying that because they're my mockups, but I'm saying that because they're super easy to use, and they're, in my opinion, one of the highest quality mockups on the market, and they come with a ton of added features and added effects for more realism and a vintage look. So I just made this more of an off-white, and that's looking really good. And of course, this graphic is completely, I guess, color separated, so your printer is going to love you when you send this to them. And that's about it for this demonstration. Hopefully that wasn't too long. If you have VINTONE or you're looking to get it, I hope you're now more confident in your ability to use this template and to create vintage graphic masterpieces in no time. If you have any questions or concerns, leave those in the comment section below or hit me on Instagram at Tehran Studio. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I post videos like this every week to help you become a better designer. Thank you as always for watching. I really appreciate your support, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.